radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening. Fade to Black. How you doing? Today is Wednesday, October 29th, 2025. I am your host, Jimmy Church. All right. I feel like I'm shouting. I'm excited. It's a very important day. Let's do this, man. All right. So tonight on the show, it's a 3-Eye Atlas evening. And I say that because this is October 29th. The anticipation is building 3-Eye Atlas, the third known interstellar object to enter our solar system, is about to pop out from behind the sun. And how that is happening and everything else and what it is, it's all about to be revealed. There is a lot of eyes focused on this right now, a lot of very smart people, but the rest of the world is watching too. We have astronomers, we have sensors, we have equipment, physicists, everybody is looking at this object. And the question is, of course, is it a comet? Is it natural? Or is it not natural? Is it ET? Is it a UFO? I am going to start off this evening by just saying this. I believe it's ET. I do. With everything that, and I'll show you what I have collected, but with everything that I have read and everything else, and the lack of details coming from sources such as NASA and ESA and even the James Webb, the lack of information is just as daunting to me about this. So we do have two comets right now. We have Swan and we have Lemon right now at the same time. And those are comets. You can see them. You can go outside right now and look up and see them. And those look like comets. 3-Eye Atlas does not. So let me lay out the show tonight. All right. I want to take your questions and I want to make this interactive with everybody. So you know what to do. Post your questions in the chat in all caps. I'm scrolling through okay, put it in all caps. If you comment in all caps, then you're going to throw me off. Please don't throw me off. Later on in the show, in about 15 or 20 minutes, we're going to have physicist Isaac Arthur joining us. Of course, he not only hosts one of the most brilliant shows on all of the internet, Futurism with Future Science Futurism with Isaac Arthur, but he knows what he's talking about. And he also puts his knowledge of science into the creation of some pretty incredible science fiction too as well. And he's a consultant on a lot of that stuff. So he's brilliant. He comes to us out of Ohio. He's been on this show many, many, many times. And I will say this about Isaac. When I first stumbled upon Isaac, when he had just started his YouTube channel and putting together these concepts of not only the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox, but contact and how it would happen and what an advanced extraterrestrial species would be doing and where they would be in technology. His work and his focus on this is unparalleled. He is absolutely amazing. But I stumbled upon him and his channel had just started, but I'm watching his information. This is my guy. This is the open mind in science that we need with these subjects, time travel and faster than light and ships and interstellar craft. Just incredible. So I reached out to Isaac in the very, very beginning, and we're fans of each other's work. And he's been on here many times. There was a recent interview that Isaac had done, and somebody sent me the comment, and I had called Isaac right after that and said, "Dude," he goes, "Yeah, man, yeah, I said it." But he said in this interview, he said, "Well, I forget what the question was, but it was, the media and what's out there, and what do you look at?" He goes, "Man, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. Not only do I like his stuff, but I really enjoy going on his show." So, and that meant a lot to me. So anyway, Isaac Arthur is going to be here in about 20 minutes. And in the meantime, post your questions in the chat. I have the chat live up here. And we're going to go through some of the data that I have collected and what we can expect over the next 12 hours or so. I will show you where 3i Atlas is currently. Okay, so with that, I do believe it's ET. All right. Now, some of the questions that are out there, Michio Kaku did say specifically, if this thing does anything, if it changes speed, if it changes direction, immediately it is not natural. That is ET, and that is under intelligent control. So that's what everybody is looking at, and also capturing more images. The images that we currently have from behind the sun are from Mars and the Mars orbiter, because that's on the other side of the sun. And 3i Atlas passed Mars while going behind the sun. And that's why we were able to grab those. I've got those images too as well. Now, a couple of comments that I have to make out of the gate. I want everybody to understand a few things. 3i Atlas was discovered and first seen around July 1st as it popped up from behind Jupiter. Okay, we now know that. But what you probably don't know is, where does the name 3i Atlas come from? Now, this is very interesting to me, and I bring this up because of a couple of reasons. But 3i is the third interstellar object. Okay, we have Oumuamua and 2i Borisov. So Oumuamua is 1i Oumuamua, 2i Borisov, and now 3i Atlas. Now, where does the Atlas come from? This is very interesting. So for all of you listening that probably don't know this, you're going to hear it here for the first time. You're going to go, what? It was discovered by the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. Let me say that again. The Atlas Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. Atlas discovered it. The Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. That's where the name 3i Atlas comes from. There has been some comments lately, and I've always found this really interesting, that the our impact alert system has been activated, and we now need to be aware of this because of 3i Atlas. And yeah, that is true. That is true. And now you know where 3i Atlas, the name, comes from. It's a very fascinating aspect to this entire thing, that this was from an alert system for impacts on planet Earth. Now, another thing that I do want to say, which I find very interesting, is the movie Don't Look Up. And if you haven't seen it, I talk about it a lot. It's an amazing movie, fantastic movie, well written, very funny, very serious, crazy ending for sure. But the images and some of the stuff that I'm about to show you tonight are directly related to Don't Look Up. And to think that Don't Look Up was made a couple of years ago, and then we are going through this exact situation right now, It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating how science fiction like that can dictate the future. But that's where we are at, and how that comet in Don't Look Up was detected and everything else. It falls right into play with what we are going through this evening on October 29th. So let's do a couple of things really quick. Now that I've got that set, I do want to say to everybody, if you want to get involved with the show tonight, okay, you can ask questions directly to myself or Isaac Arthur when he comes on about 3i Atlas. Put your comments in the chat in all caps. So then I can go over here and highlight, because just like any other show, when I do this live, the comments is always very, very, very busy. And there's a lot of people here, and the ability to post is there, but I can't scroll through thousands of posts in the comments. So the only way for me to catch up to everything, and I do want to get your questions in, put it in all caps so I can see them. And I'm reading through them now. I'm just highlighting them. A lot of questions already. Okay, so all right, are we set? Are we ready to go? Let's actually start with this. This is the first day that the comet was seen. Comet, object. I just said comet, object. And this is on July 1st. And this is as it popped up behind Jupiter. Now, also, I do want to say this. I'm going to pull this down. This is how important this show is. Yep. Yep. Fresh Fade to Black coffee being poured in the studio. And I was so backed up before the show. So was being made. And I had to rush into the studio, sit down, and start the show tonight. So now I've got my coffee. Yep, nothing like a French press. Back to this. Okay, so this is July 1st, and I just mentioned Don't Look Up. This is straight out of Don't Look Up. It is just absolutely crazy. But there it is. And even here in this image, we have to remember in this is a GIF. This is footage. 250,000 miles per hour. All right, so it is ripping. It's 250,000 miles per hour. And a couple of comments that I want to make on that number, 250,000 miles per hour. And they're saying that it's possibly 6 to 7 billion years old, older than our star system, older than half of the age of the universe, right? That is 7 billion years old. And we're always talking about propulsion systems for spacecraft to go through space and achieve these speeds, and how do we do that, and so forth. Well, here is an object that is 7 billion years old that is still traveling at 250,000 miles per hour. The comments from science, there's the vacuum of space, boom, you'll never slow down, there's no friction, and once you achieve the velocity that I guess you just turn your engines off and you hit that speed. Talking about fuel and how to, well, here we have, that we would have to do this and do this with. Here is an object that's traveling at 250,000 miles per hour for the last 6 billion years. I'm confused with that. I'm just confused with the thought. So 250,000 miles per hour. What is doing this? We, as we navigate through space, we use planets, which comes back to 3i Atlas, for gravitational assist, to speed up, to slow down, to change directions, right? Slingshot off of these planets. Has this object been doing that? Well, if it's natural, No, it would have done that by accident. That's why science is saying, Michio Kaku brings up this very important point, that this object is zipping past our sun right now as I speak to you. And if it does change direction and speed up or slow down, right, then that's what something intelligent would do. So all eyes are focused on this right now. It's 250,000 miles per hour. What if the opposite happens, right? What if it slows down? What if it hits the brakes? What if it stops here? It could. That would be fascinating. What if it speeds up and changes direction, just like Oumuamua did? Avi Loeb has stressed that and wrote a book about Oumuamua and it being extraterrestrial. That is the name of his book, E.T. And it did change directions and it did speed up. And that wasn't enough to convince the scientific community out there, the astronomers, the astro and theoretical physicists, that this was an extraterrestrial, non natural object. I think the book lays out a pretty strong case for that. But suddenly, with 3i Atlas, that is the focus. So we're going to be looking at that, and I've been checking the news and checking for updates all the way to the start of the show tonight, and haven't gotten any updates. And again, the silence, right? I just, yeah. All right, now let's go to this next image, and the green line here is this is a brilliant animation, by the way. The green line is 3i Atlas, and you can see it as it passes our sun. Now, you can see where Earth is. Now, see, as Earth is passing behind the sun, here comes 3i Atlas. Now, Earth is behind the sun. This is where we are right now, right there. Okay. And so it was behind the sun when we were on the other side of the sun. So that's where we are right now. And that is the planned trajectory as it exits our solar system. This is brilliant, isn't it? Just watch this. See Mars? There's Mars. Boop. And that's when all of those images were brought in from the Mars orbiter. Okay, so you can see where Earth is. This is very important. Now let's watch this next flyby here as the animation circulates. Okay, Mars is the red ring, and you can see it right there. Mars crosses in front of its path, by the way. And whew, man, that was close, right? And you can see where Earth is. And we're going to have over the next month or so, we're going to have some brilliant images and data come in, because Earth will be on the other side of the sun, the same side of the sun as Atlas is. But wow, that was really close to Mars, wasn't it? And there you go. Now you can see where Earth is and where Atlas is. And these types of data sets that I just showed you right now, it hasn't been out enough into the media and into social media for the rest of the world to see, so we can fully understand what we are about to encounter, what we are about to experience. It's very strange to me, because when I look at this and I look at this animation, I'm fascinated with it. And it's exactly the information that, where is it? What's going on? Why is it on the, why do we have to wait for it? Well, that right there, it clearly illustrates what is going on and what is to be expected over the next 30 days. It's very, 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 very important. Well, I just showed it to you if you haven't seen this for the first time. So let's take one more look at this. The red ring is Mars. You can see Mars coming across the path of 3i Atlas right here. That's when all of those great images were captured. You can see where Earth is on the backside of the sun, and then 3i Atlas pops out. Earth is going to pop out, and we're going to be facing each other here very, very soon. Very, very exciting times right now. Very exciting times. All right, let's before I bring in Isaac, let's go to some questions here. first one up. What is your number one reason it's ET? The number one reason, there is nothing to me, to my eyeballs, that illustrates a comet. It's way outside of everything. Of course, the speed is something that I'm very impressed with. All the other sub data sets in it's illuminated, it's self-illuminated. That's interesting. It's illuminated from the front. That's interesting. The tail facing the wrong direction. That is also interesting. Some of the rough data coming out that it's entirely of nickel, lack of iron. The CO2 oxygen mix is bizarre. I've got a chart for that I'm going to bring up here in a minute so you can understand some more about that. But there is nothing to me that says comet. And that's it. There is nothing definitive that has been presented to science or from science. Isaac Arthur is here. Hello, Isaac. I'll bring Isaac in a second. There's nothing that if it's a comet. Now, here's the brilliant thing about Isaac. I don't know what Isaac's opinion is. I don't. Maybe he thinks it's a comet. Maybe he doesn't. Isaac and I have had some pretty spirited discussions over the years if we have been visited or not from ET, even though that's what he writes about. He's got the best presentation. He's got the best videos and applies the science about ET visitation, but he's like, nah, it hasn't happened yet. And I don't know if I've convinced Isaac over the years that the possibility is here, and I have seen strange stuff. But what does he think about 3I Atlas? I feel that it's ET. Okay, hold on. Let's see what this is. This is the info surrounding this event is like static. How do we sort the truth out from the garbage? That's exactly the most difficult thing here. When anything is silent, all right, when it's like that, people are going to fill in the blanks. They're going to fill in their own blanks. There are a lot of celebrities or sports stars or these people that we know, these personalities. And when they don't talk, when they live a private life, then we turn around and fill in the blanks. Oh, this person is blah, blah, this. We fill in the blanks. And that's what happens. And so then we have a false image built up on somebody or something because we don't have the information about it. And we fill in the blanks and we develop our own dogma, right? We build up our own thing. And that's what's happening around 3I Atlas. All right. There's been some pretty fascinating images that have been posted. There's been a lot of theories about 3I Atlas that have been posted. And how much of it is fact? Well, we're not getting, unless you have a satellite of your own with a telescope on it and imaging and spectrometers and everything else to collect your own data. The data that you're getting are from people that don't have that information either. All right. And it's okay to make stuff up or theorize or think about this, because I've developed, I think it's ET. I do. Is it an interstellar probe? Is it scientific equipment? Is there something alive on it? Is it controlled by AI? Are there AI androids? I don't know. I don't know any of those things, but I just don't think it's natural. That's my take. All right, Isaac, are you ready? Give me the nod. Are you ready? Are you ready? Isaac Arthur is here, everybody. Isaac, say hello to the world.
Good to be back on, Jimmy. Hello, everybody.
You're the absolute very best, man. And thank you for taking the time tonight. And I'm going to do a quick adjustment. We didn't do a sound check or anything with Isaac tonight. I just told him just roll in and be ready. And I think I've got you dialed in. Good enough for now. Isaac, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Jimmy?
I'm fantastic. It's October 29th. We've been waiting for this day. And have you I haven't checked. I should have gone. I want to throw myself under the bus. Have you done any presentations on 3i Atlas?
Just the one. It broke his news while I was on a vacation, so I ended up writing a script while I was on vacation, and then I released it. Actually, it was mid-September. So it was one of those ones where I feel like I'm more formal one because I don't really do news as much. Probably needs to wait till like March because there's going to be new data coming into at least then. That's really important. But we gave it an initial treatment, looked at some of the options for it.
Okay, so let me ask you out of the gate, where are you leaning on this? Natural or unnatural? There's no gray area. Don't give me the Isaac Arthur. Don't dance.
It's not a comet, but I do think it's
Oh. Now,
well, that's not true.
I just told you don't go. I just said don't do that.
My wife has a joke that my answer to everything is it depends, and we don't have enough data to say that it isn't anything just yet. But we can say it's not a comet because comets all things go through our own solar system over and over again at bait. They get a certain kind of profile to them because they're getting warmed up and thawed and basically getting freeze dried over the course of many rotations. So they don't look the same as this is doing, and that's kind of the biggest difference there is. We don't have a lot of examples of interstellar spaceships. We have a lot of examples of interstellar rogue objects, and we don't have a lot of examples of comets that might have traveled from other solar systems. So trying to say what this is typical of is kind of tricky at this point. We don't have maximum data yet. We do finally have perihelion coming up, or just pass, and it's one of those ones where you can say it's an alien ship, but then you have to say, is it a probe? Is it a colony ship? Is it an invasion force? Is it a big, hey, look at us, see you can spot us? Or is it just passing through like Rama from Rendezvous with Rama? Mm-hmm. And each of those looks different.
Right. I keep bringing up Rendezvous with Rama. The parallels between that series of books and what we're going through right now, extraordinary. Also, the Arthur C. Clarke just had a crystal ball.
Yeah.
He had a real way of doing this. But then like the movie Don't Look Up, again, there's a lot of crazy parallels, and that was made 3 years ago, and here we are dealing with this now. Okay, so let me ask you a couple of specific questions. You don't think it's a comet? All right.
I don't think anyone thinks it's a comet at this point either. So
okay,
just because that's a kind of a classification difference. Comets are in system.
I was wondering when Ewans were going to jump to our side of the fence. Yeah. I knew it was coming. Do you remember maybe 5 years ago or so, you were on the show and one night you and I had a brilliant back and forth about UFOs and if we've been visited here, and kind of a classic show. It was pretty interesting. You did not bend. And I like that. I often say you're never going to reason somebody out of their belief system or what they have learned. You're just not going to do that. And I could not
reason to rationalize what we want. And I'm as right as anybody else, but
right. But now, and I had Lawrence Krauss on the show last week or the week before, and there's lots of life out there, but we've never been visited. Anybody that says that they've seen something is lying. And
I feel like that's the wrong perspective. Either the life isn't out there anywhere near us, or of course it's visiting us. People visit Kansas. Of course if it's out there, it visits. That's why I tend to assume it's not anywhere nearby.
So. And see, you have an open mind about this, where you allow yourself to consider the possibilities and the probabilities of this. So much of the scientific community, at least publicly facing, is not. Mm-hmm. And but you're also data driven. I say you, the educated. I don't have the PhD. I don't have.
I would say a lot of scientists tend to assume there are aliens, or they tend to be in the same camp Lawrence is in there, where they just tend to assume that it doesn't talk to us for some reason. That's a perfectly legitimate perspective to take, but I think that it kind of comes down to if you're working on these, you come from a certain perspective on what does the universe look like, and you kind of rationalize how the various bits and pieces fit to make your viewpoint. I grew up on Star Trek, so I was kind of starting off the assumption that there was aliens all over the place. And I was like, well, why don't they have a Starbucks here? And even if they're not visiting a very let's come down, shake hands the UN kind of way. And so you got to say, based on the available data, what does this tell us? And the answer is nothing. It doesn't actually tell us. Like, none of the positions on the Fermi paradox or aliens are 100% locked in. There's not enough data to be able to say one way or another. But from a logical perspective, it's kind of like with the well, we'll call it a comet for now, but with Atlas, right? If it's passing through here and it's a probe, it's a horrible probe. Because they say, well, it's going to pass by Mars, it's going to pass by Venus, it's going to pass by Jupiter. It's not passing within 10 million miles of any of those. And you want to pass by things like that because you get a better.
But now you're contradicting your own stuff by saying that. Okay, you want me to tell you how you're doing it?
Please do.
You constantly, and you do this in such a brilliant way, that an advanced civilization would be beyond our comprehension, would be beyond our ability to understand or to know. And the way that you have presented that, so and it's always captured my attention, and I think that that really needs to be said more. So by your own statements and the way that you presented stuff over the years, why should we expect their data collection and ability to do stuff a way that we would understand? Maybe they have the ability to study everything as they pass by it, no matter what the distance is, but they've got other star systems to go and visit. They need to do this as quick as possible.
And so you're absolutely right that we can't assume we know how they're going to behave, but if they want to investigate the other star systems, at least one of those planets they should go by to speed up on. They get a free speed bump off it. So
what if that happens though? What if it pumps the brakes after a perihelion?
If it absolutely pumps the brakes,
yeah,
then it's an alien ship.
For sure.
Well, okay, there might be some scenarios where it wouldn't be, but and again, it's like, well, okay, what's the options at that point? It's not an alien ship; it's a spacecraft for the future that would do a time portal. Same difference from our perspective, though. If it pumps the brakes in a very obvious way, intelligent objects built by artificial objects look artificial, unless you're trying to make them not look artificial. And it's entirely reasonable to say, well, let's make this thing look like a comet or an asteroid or whatever it is, so people don't know what it looks like. But then, why make it so big for a probe? That's a huge probe.
Again, you're contradicting yourself. Don't be a walking hypocritical paradox. You can't do that.
It is
because that's exactly the things that we need to consider here. We can't put it in our
though. We have to say, if it's going to be X and Y, if we get some new piece of data, what would that tend to tell us? And again, if it pumps the brakes, yeah, it's artificial.
Yeah.
Unless there's something really obvious, like half the thing explode out because it hit some other asteroid. And then, yes, you say, well, okay, that was a collision. That probably wasn't their planned method of braking. But yeah, it could it be an alien ship in the sense of it's a probe or it's a car ship? I don't disagree that's possible, but I think we have to say, just from a reasoning perspective, we could all turn out to be completely wrong. But you have to say, based on what we know, I don't know what aliens look like, but I think I know what their hammers look like or what their screwdrivers look like. They probably look like ours. They probably function the same way. Do they for sure? No, but if we don't at least put a few things down to say, well, because it's not even, are we going to get the best data? Are we going to get the right answer? We want to think about these topics, and so we have to pursue them in a reasonably logical way. We know we're going to be wrong about some things, but we're going to be right about some too. And more importantly, at least because it keeps us occupied. We don't want to go into this.
That's such a good point. So let me ask you this. The speed of this object is clocking in at a pretty blistering, from our perspective, 250,000 miles per hour.
Very fast.
6 billion years old. All right. If even that is arbitrary, that's everything's just a guess here. But 250,000 miles per hour without a propulsion system, how does it maintain that speed over 6 billion years?
Well, that part's not really the problem. It's not really as fast that sounds like. That is still only about 1,000th the speed of light.
It is, but the question is this question is a simple one, because I'm a simple mind. Okay. Why do we need fuel on an interstellar ship if all we have to do is kickstart it to 250,000 miles per hour, then we don't need fuel after that. Are we going to cruise on that interstellar ship for the next 6 billion years at 250,000 miles per hour? Or
not.
does it slow down?
If it slows down, it needs more fuel. So in space, by and large, and there are a few exceptions, you only use speed when you only use fuel up when you're either trying to speed up, slow down, or engage in a maneuver. And if you're doing that, as fast as that thing is moving, it should be wanting to move towards Jupiter right now or towards one of the other denser planets to do a speed boost on. And that's all about how close you can get to it. But if they've had, I mean, I don't know where the age estimate's coming from on that one, but 6 billion years at that speed gets you anywhere outside the galaxy. And honestly, it wouldn't get you outside this galaxy, unfortunately, because that'd be beneath the escape velocity of the galaxy. But it would let you have gotten to anywhere inside our galaxy, including the Magellanic Clouds, I think. So if it's been around that long, but more likely it would just be a fragment of some leftover or broken planet or things like that has been drifting that long. I don't know that it would have to have been drifting that long, even if it's that old, though. Trying to actually determine where it's from is going to be a long calculatory process of getting very accurate vectors and trying to back calculate what was where they could have passed by. But wherever it originated from is not necessarily the last star system to pass there either.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And so if we look at it like that, its trajectory, and we backtrack, apparently it originated in Sagittarius, where the WOW signal, which you know about, that's in your home state, right? Where the WOW signal originated from. Now, is that another coincidence that we put on top of this, or is there something more of substance?
In this case, it could be, because if memory serves, it was several degrees off from the actual WOW signal angle, which again, we don't know where it's going to originate from. So a signal moving at light speed is not going to come from the same angle as a ship that left from there, for instance. But 9%, if I remember right, and don't quote me on that, it's probably a bit big for that. But more importantly, Sagittarius is where the center of the galaxy is at. That's the direction to go to the center. And there's a lot of stuff there. There's also a lot of stuff that moves out very quickly from there, because that's got a lot of star collapses and ejection events where you'll have even whole black holes get ejected at, I want to say, about double the speed that's moving at is like the top line. But we do get things that get knocked out of the galaxy at very high speed. And you won't find anything inside the galaxy that's not moving on a galactic rim trajectory going less than 500 kilometers per second, which I can't convert that to miles per hour off the top of my head. Let's see, that'd be about 0.2% of light speed, a little over 0.2% of light speed. So a hair faster than this thing's going, but maybe half again. But in that same kind of zone, it's very quick if that's 250,000 miles per hour, excuse me. But don't quote me on any of those figures because I don't have a calculator on that.
You know what? It's coming from you, so it's good. It's good. We're not going to question that. Let me pull this up. This is a chart of all of the makeup of CO2 to oxygen mixture in every known comet that we have measured. Okay,
so we got the CO2 to the water composition. Excuse me.
Right. Now, long period comets are the circles, the Jupiter family comets are the squares, main belt comets are the triangles that you see there. Now, check out where 3i Atlas sits. It is a complete anomaly. Doesn't match up with any comet that we have ever measured.
Well, it's got 216R2 up there, which I have to admit I'm not familiar with. But
no, that's the only other comet, and that's also an anomaly that fell outside of this CO2 oxygen ratio.
So, and again, I'm not an expert on asteroids, so I want to put in comments. So let me put that up front here. Someone might come in there and say that's completely wrong. But as an example of how you get an anomaly like that off of something natural, specifically natural, if this is not a comet because it came in from another solar system, comets have gotten baked over and over again. So a lot of things will have come off them already. They have a side that has already been baked out. They won't emit the same ratios of certain elements because water and carbon dioxide do not sublimate at the same temperatures. So one that's going to baked more will have a lower ratio of one of those to the other versus something that's just been drifting through space where water is probably the most common molecule that isn't hydrogen only in the universe. Water is all over the place. So we're going to have a very high amount of those, although I'm not sure how to read that chart. I'm kind of squinting to see it, I'm afraid. But it would look like it has a lot more carbon dioxide to water ratio. And that would be my first guess would be that's because it's never been baked much before. So the CO2, which comes off more readily, is now coming out for the first time. But that's one of those questions where you're a grain of salt on that. We don't know enough. We need to have a probe out to it or something like that. But it would be very hard to actually get a probe to right now based on how fast it's going and the time period we had to work on it.
Yeah, we have two probes that are en route. One going to, I think it's Enceladus, and the other one is going to another moon. Two, and that will fall into the path, and they only have 2 weeks to do it. To adjust the course, but they can actually get pretty close, reasonably close. But we do have this one opportunity with these two probes, and I think that the mission directors on both of those are absolutely 100% considering a course alteration. One is going to Saturn, one's going to Jupiter. Two different courses, two different missions. They happen to be in the same spot at the same time. Going in opposite directions, right? But they're right there, and they can alter the course just enough to get in to the tail section of 3i Atlas. So we'll see if that actually happens. Now let me pull this up. This is I've got some pretty cool images here. Now this is from your favorite. This is from the James Webb Space Telescope. And this was taken on August 6th. Okay. Again, it just the issues that I have with this, which everybody else does too. This is self-illuminated and doesn't have a tail. That's the crazy. What do you make of the self-illumination part of what everybody else has seen and detected? That it's illuminated from the front, by the way, and from the center. When it popped out behind Jupiter, it wasn't reflecting sunlight at that point. The only reason why we saw it is because it was lit up on its own. What do you make of that?
That could be the angle of the tail. I would say for self-illumination, if we're assuming it's reflecting sunlight as the source of that, then it's trying to figure out, well, what's the particle composition off the tail, off the halo, off the actual object itself. And that's where you can get more data. If we're actually assuming it's making its own light, then that's an artificial object, period. And so I'm assuming we're going to get reasonably decent proof that that is not actually creating its own light. But if it is, then again, that would be another one of those ones where you say, well, obviously there can always be another natural explanation we missed, but if it was creating its own light, it moves into the highly probable to be artificial category. And so that would be another one of those falsifiable examples at that point. If it's just a matter of, well, we are not used to seeing this kind of dust tail or this type of halo off of the object because it's not actually a comet, it's a body that's coming to get thawed out for the first time, then that's one of those things where we learn a lot too, but we still don't know.
What do you let me pull this down. This is a great question, and I think that a lot of people are saying this right now. I think it could be a messenger angel. What do you think about that? And in years past, and the reason why this is an interesting question for you, Isaac, in the years past, that's exactly the message, right? Ancient civilizations see something like this, they're going to jump to that. And if it turns out to be artificial and it's ET and they just do a drive-by, is that a message just saying, hey, we're here?
It could be. I mean, I can't comment on theologically if it is an angel or not. If it's an angel, it is either making itself known or not. That's supernatural at that point, so we can't study it with physics. If it's aliens just going by to say, do you see us? I feel like that's possible, but isn't there an easier way to do that? Couldn't they just, as an example, a comet's tail makes an amazingly good projector tail to be like putting a screen on. They could be putting up a gigantic message of like, here's a circle with a radial image in it, or here's a bunch of squares and triangles. And I don't care how skeptical you are. If you see a gigantic picture of triangles, squares, and circles in the comet's tail, you are assuming that that thing is artificial or you're mad. So that would be obvious proof at that point in time was artificial. If they're trying to give us an intentional, hey, here, we're, this is us, I don't think it's a very good one because it leaves way too much ambiguity. Plus, we could only see it right now. We would have missed this thing. Well, I don't really know that we'd have missed it completely. We would certainly not have seen anything particularly anomalous about it until relatively recently, or at least we wouldn't have been able to confirm that. Last decade or two to really be able to spot and say, hey, that's and we see anomalies in the past too, but we just tend to assume, oh, that's normal. We keep finding orbits of astronomy where decades after it was cataloged, someone says, that anomaly they just kind of wrote off as noise. Turns out it is connected to some phenomena we've now found is out there. So I don't think it's a very good way to have signaled to us that this was artificial or hello, not when there's so many other options available to them. And again, they also don't seem to be burning correctly to try to maneuver around in the solar system to slow down or anything like that. So I'd have to ask what's their motive, what's their objective, and we don't know. But
okay, for sure. Mm-hmm. But I want to bring up a point that you have made many times, and you do it so well, that if an advanced civilization out there, crosses that singularity of expansion. And then suddenly you can go from visiting a nearby planet to taking over that star system to taking over the galaxy in a very, very, very short period of time. Mm-hmm. You're just going to flop, right? And that we haven't seen any evidence of that in our Milky Way, that theoretically our Milky Way should have been taken over by an advanced civilization by now.
There was one here. Yes. Yeah.
You're right. So, but based on that, why would we be surprised about space debris or probes, a von Neumann situation, and then finally one entered our star system? Why would that surprise anybody if the possibility of that kind of life out there, eventually randomly something's going to come by? Could this be it? And why would that be such a surprising thing to happen?
It wouldn't be in of itself. It just doesn't really hit the characteristics. Like if I was to be told this is definitely artificial, what is it? I'd say, well, it's a leftover of some, genocidal war from thousands of years ago, because it would look better as a wrecked piece of material, as it were, floating around through a star system. And you would have that. You'd have leftover things from previous civilizations. Some would float out of the galaxy if they're moving fast enough. Some would get bound to a star, and some would just float through the galaxy. I think I did an episode called Ghost Armadas on that idea. But it is the idea that this is a very large object, again, for a probe. And if it is them out the initial expansion wave of a colony ship, really weird coincidence for us to encounter it just now when we can see it, as opposed to, a century from now when we could have gone and actually, touched it, looked at it, seen it up close. And if we keep getting these things popping up, and this is an important thing to remember, it's not really going away. It's chasing out at, whatever kilometers per second. That is something we could potentially catch up, and we know what its angle is going to be when it leaves. It's kind of visible. We can get hands on this thing eventually. Same for Oumuamua. Any of these interstellar comets that come through, or interstellar objects, I don't really like to call them comets because they really are not. We'll be able to get them. If they are natural objects or derelicts that are floating, we can send a ship to them eventually. Maybe a couple 100 years, maybe 100 years, maybe 50, who knows. They can go catch up to it. It can't run away forever in space if it's a natural object. So we'll be able to get a definite answer on this one day. Might be after you and I are both dust, but we will be able to follow this thing.
What about, and this is something else that you write about and have done presentations on, what if this thing drops something off? And we haven't got really good images yet, right? This is the Very Large Telescope. That's the VLT, man.
Yeah,
that's the best the VLT could do.
That's very nice.
I gotta tell you that we don't know anything. That's the VLT. That is called what the image from the VLT is called detailed image of 3I Atlas. Okay, so we don't know the shape of this thing. We don't. Is there anything of the? There's nothing here.
Nope.
There's nothing here. Isn't that crazy?
It is. It's amazing. It's I would say kind of like archaeology. It's often impressive how much you can detect from very little when you really get your stuff together, and then what you'll find out later on. Although you always need to keep a certain humility on that too, because sometimes when you have very little to go off of, you say, well, then by logic, it must be X. And the big difference between philosophy and science is that logic without evidence and data can sometimes take you down some bad paths. They can do that in science too, just tends to do a little bit less if you got real data. As an example, let's say that was a big carrier. It's just a carrier probe ship, and it's full of probes and material to make more probes with. As it goes by, it's not going by the individual planets because it's going to give them each their own probe. And its probes are the same size our probes are. They are, a meter across to maybe a ton.
Mm-hmm.
We ain't seeing that.
Not yet.
We won't. Unless it goes into orbit of us, which probably we get one too. But if it wants to drop them off so they can do nice angles, it will pop them off at a decent speed with some fuel to slow down and make a rendezvous. And the way we'll know about that is maybe one of our probes will pick it up around Jupiter in another decade. So we would never see probes coming out that without, well, I would say we never. In a century, we might have enough system to be able to pick something like that up. But right now, no. The thing could be sending off all sorts of waves of probes of its own for the solar system, and we never see it right now because that's what we see. But you might pick something that was bigger up coming off it, and this was the same case for Oumuamua, which is much smaller than this. If it had popped up something that was using, say, a mag sail that was going to push out with, and that spreads out and it starts, getting glossed over by the tail or just reflecting light, then we might see a tiny little dot on that image near it and say, well, what is that? And we say, well, I don't know, this could be a fragment of a piece of it that broke off, or it could be an ejected ship. And then we have some ways we could tell afterwards, but it's a very tiny window to be able to speak about these things with confidence, which again is, I'd really love to have the maximum data we can get off this thing before we draw conclusions one way or another, because it's a cool anomaly one way or another, whether it's artificial or interstellar. And I want to make sure that we get the right conclusion off it, because it could be awesome, whatever it is. And it could end up being some giant alien museum. And that would be awesome to trail too. So like I said, don't think of this thing as leaving the solar system never to be seen again. And most will get it to chase it down in a couple of centuries.
Now, let's say it's artificial. Well, I believe that it is.
Sure.
Let's say you say it's artificial. Okay. All right. Could we or should we expect a message communication of some kind? Would they have been studying us long enough to know that we went through a TV carrier signal phase and we went through a radio phase, and well, we still kind of have radio. You know what I mean? Is there
conscious? Because they'd have been coming into it. They'd have encountered our signals. They're moving slow enough, by the way, that they would only have there's not that much of a time shortage on them because they're moving much slower than light speed. Yeah, they'd have gotten the radio signals. They would have been pretty far out, but not be able to detect them. Because again, they would have been, I'm trying to remember the exact speed on this thing is, but they might have been a tenth of a light year out when when Marconi started messing around, maybe twice that. And that's not that far. It's lots of AUs, right? But that's I don't know, 10 times the furthest planet we got away from us. And so they'd have heard all that radio as they're coming in. And if they're conscious and they have power supply to actually run detectors and things like that, they'd have a lot of time to learn, especially because on the front end of signals, they're not very compressed. We learn to do good digital compression later on. Digital compression is like an IOU note for, patterns. So the more compression you have, the more you look like random noise. Our early signals don't look like random noise. It would have been very easy for them to figure out a lot of stuff from that. And they'd certainly been able to detect where we were at and that our planet was the source and all that stuff fairly quickly. So if they want to send us a message, I'm not quite sure why wait so long unless they were just energy starved. Because if they run on something like solar, they got, say, a few fission reactors in there or something like that, they might be really short on power.
But what about, when you drive by a friend's house and you honk your horn?
I don't.
You're not necessarily throwing out a whole lot of data there, but you're saying hello.
Yeah. You let them know, hey, we're here. If you want to talk to us, we'd love to hear from you. But I don't feel like they've honked the horn. They haven't stepped on the brake. They haven't honked on the horn. That if they really want to talk to us, the thing is, they know what our technological level is right now. That's easy for them to determine by having listened to our signals for last century, because we talk about it. And, it's on the radio. So they've listened to all these programs. I mean, they've got anything else to do other than probably they'd have tons of their own archives to keep track of. I don't know what you do on a 10,000-year space journey, but you could go through an awful lot of classic films then. By tentative, certainly means you want to listen to whatever the local feed is as you pass through a star system.
Well, yeah, aren't we? Okay. Now, this is where I'm going to jump into the head of Isaac Arthur. This is why I love you so much, and I do love you, is we are assuming that this thing has been doing 250,000 miles per hour for 6 billion years or whatever, a billion years, a million, whatever, that's it. But what if that's not the case? What if it just exited, it came out of warp drive? It was traveling at 99% of the speed of light. It just pumped the brakes outside of our solar system and it cruised by here at 250,000 miles per hour. And it's about to jump into another piece of their alien technology and maybe faster than light, and they're going to go somewhere else. How do we know that that's not the case?
I see some of the later books in the Rama series that he wrote with Lee Gentry. But okay, so it comes out of
the Lee Gentry books weren't as good as
no, but there's some fun stuff in them at least.
Gentry Lee, I love him. They brought him, a very smart guy. Mm-hmm. They brought in Gentry. This is my opinion. Because Arthur couldn't write dialogue. Arthur couldn't have two people having a normal conversation. So Gentry Lee comes in.
A lot of the sci-fi greats.
yeah, right. And I thought Gentry just killed it, but I enjoyed his stuff. And he's brilliant.
Much better dialogue, way better dialogue.
Yeah, very brilliant guy. Okay, so anyway, what was I just saying? Oh, is it possible that we're seeing it exit out of some kind of warp situation and it's slowing down
sure,
we wouldn't know what to look for if that's the case.
The problem is we were not seeing it come out of warp at all because we didn't see it do it, unfortunately.
Right.
I would sell my soul, but I'd certainly put a mortgage on it to see it actually come out of warp. If it had that ability, I would love to just even be able to see the loose bits of light that were coming around on the edge of that, because you could learn so much about how they did it then. But if we're assuming a fast light drive or even a sublight drive that doesn't violate causality, which is its own issue, but just let you go really close to the speed of light, like we see in Ender's Game series, for instance, by Orson Scott Card. There they go just on the speed of light, and they can just crank that out and stop that. Nothing in physics explicitly bans that. But usually when you want to purge that much energy that fast, it has to go in a couple of different ways. And the usual is energy and light. So usually if you're slowing down an object that was, well, let's say the small side, this thing is 3 kilometers in diameter. So probably something like 20 gigatons minimum mass. Slowing that down from the speed of light, 20 gigatons, 10 to 13, 17, 10 to 30 joules of energy. If that was being released over the course of even an hour, it would be as bright as the sun was. Although, again, that's napkin math. It might be that he had 10 hours for that, but very bright. We'd have seen that if it was being done quickly.
But, okay, so hypothetically speaking, wouldn't ET have the technology not to do that, so you're not making yourself visible to everybody else?
Sure. They could have done as a neutrino flux if they had that technology, which would also be awesome. And if you do it as neutrinos, we might have picked that up, right? Or we might be able to look back and say, hey, look, that was what that anomaly was. Because we can detect neutrinos, but we can, like, 1 out of a good jillion of them, we can find that extra. But you could see something like that. Or maybe they don't do it that way. Maybe they dump it gravitically. That's the nicest way to change speed without it showing up. That's what the Earth and the Moon and the Sun do to each other all the time. You don't see a big light flash every time the moon goes around the Earth because it's doing it gravitically, as opposed to photonically with light. Actually, not sure if photonically is a word, but whatever. They could have that technology, yeah, but we don't have the evidence that they do. That's the problem.
Yeah, when we find out, I know. When we find out, and one day we will, right? Yeah. We'll be able to sit down and talk to ET and talk about these things. People like you are just going to go, damn, I didn't think of that. Well, of course you didn't.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
One way or another, right? Right. Well, it seems so simple now.
My wife was saying I need to get business cards, and I finally did. I was trying to figure out what to put on. I thought I put professional seer. I'm right 51% of the time. And I thought, well, I can't do that because, to be honest, that's probably called the high side too.
That is the high side. That is the high side for sure.
But the thing about science, you're going to be wrong a lot, and you take it with good grace, and you mustn't personalize it. And you do see that with a lot of folks in sciences. That's my theory. I don't want anyone to take it apart. But you're going to be wrong. That's just the nature of it. I'm going to, if I survive long enough, to be finding out all these things and be like, hey, in episode 235, you said X, and that was so wrong. It's like, yeah, that's going to happen.
Let's look at this question from Terrence, and I think this illustrates a lot of people right now, how they are thinking. Mm-hmm. Does anyone really think NASA and the government don't know exactly what this is? So that is a great point. And if they did know, would they tell us?
They were broadcasting signals to us. The imagery they're getting is completely consistent with what the actual equipment would produce. So it's not like they have a higher resolution version of this thing that they're not showing us. Plus, I know a lot of folks
that to be true. Isaac, I'm not busting your chops, but do you believe that to be true? Do you think that the imaging that they have revealed to us is the best that there is?
For that telescope, yeah. Just because we have all that other data for it. Plus, we know it's actual optical profile. That's not secret. That's it's maxed out. It's immense. It's expensive, and that's all you're getting out of that. Now, that would be a very sophisticated lie at that point? I'm not gonna say it can't be done. Of course, they could be gaslight us and God knows what. It's the government, so let's not pretend like any of us trusted that far. But at the same time, NASA leaks like a sieve.
They don't have employees left to leak.
Well, not at the moment, yeah. And I've never believed personally that NASA would be that good at keeping these things secret. I could believe it from the Air Force. I could believe it from the Army. Although, I was Army for a long time. We leaked like a sieve too. And then you had all the other countries too on that one. So if we were getting an actual signal from it in radio, I feel like, because again, you could pick that up as an amateur astronomer too. I feel like we would know about that. As the image itself, I don't see that they'd be put up with the expensive telescopes that had a lower resolution they actually really had in hiding that, because these are not for any good for spying on China or Russia or anything like that. These are good for taking looks at planets, and that's all they're good for. And I don't see a lot of motivation to screw with that.
I think there's.
But then they could come up with one.
On the imaging side, I agree with you, and the reason why is there's too many amateur astronomers right now that are really, really good at imaging and detecting this stuff. So they're not going to be able to, fake their way or fudge their way through that.
It'd be a lot harder, at least.
But picking up an alien signal from them and lying about it and not telling us the truth, I think that's a possibility.
Definitely a possibility. But if it was intentionally broadcast to be heard by Earth, right? If it's aliens who are trying to chat with our government specifically, then they could be using a tight beam laser array that went to one specific dish that we don't know if that exists, right?
Exactly. And what if that happened last year? Okay, we're going to be there October 29th. All right, and just get ready. Anything is possible, right?
Yeah, I would say this. If I was the government, was always kind of a hard thing to start speculating about, but I feel like if I was trying to prepare around that, I might have had the Webb telescope array go down for maintenance or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Let me pull this image up. Now, again, it was first detected on July 1st. This is July 22nd. And July 30th, August 12th, and August 21st. Okay, you can see. Let me actually hold on. I will clean this up right now, everybody. Just relax. Let's go with this. Does that clean it up a little bit better? Okay, so July 19th, the 22nd, the 24th, the 30th, August 12th, and August 21st. Again, serious lack of tail. And the brightest part of this comet, or I say comet, object, is from the front. And now this was taken from, hold on, I'll tell you exactly what imaging system was used. Just stay with me on this. I've got too many large computer monitors in front of me. Okay, this image is this one. This is, I don't have the imaging system in my notes with this particular image. Sets of images, I should say. Obviously, it's the same sensor system that is doing the reading. But you can see 3.9 AUs, 3.8, right? You see that?
Yep.
3.6, 3.1, and finally 2.9. But no tail. That's the thing. It just looks like an object hauling balls.
Sure. It shouldn't have much of a tail until it gets to at least 3 AU from the sun. I don't happen to know, by the way, if that's saying that's the distance from the sun or not. Need that key, unfortunately. But if we're assuming, I don't know what the delta there is either. It said so we got R 3.6 and delta 2.8 AU. I'm sorry, I just don't know if they're actually trying to say distance wise, but until something gets to about 3 AU out from the sun, it's not going to have too much of a tail. Now, the flip side of that is you can have a front-facing tail on these things. It's not an object moving through an atmosphere. You know, it can be boiling off on one side of the sun very easily. Plus, you can get a lot of optical illusions with trying to look at the thing, too. So I can't say conclusively on that, but then I'm just not expert enough on that area of astronomy to be able to have a opinion. So
this next image, this is from the Mars observer as it passes Mars.
I think it just did its closest approach, didn't it?
Yep. And those paths crossed too. That was close to an impact.
Well, I think it was still for Mars. I want to say it didn't get any closer than like 30 million miles. I wrote that down earlier.
Okay. Well, here, but again, the reason why I'm pulling this up, and this is a high res image from the Mars orbiter, no tail.
Yeah.
No tail. There's nothing here. And now, let me get your comments on this. Okay, so here we go.
Mm-hmm.
The red ring is Mars.
Yep.
And its orbit. You see Atlas approaching now. This is the beginning of the loop. Now, see where Mars is coming around? Now, watch this. Whoop. Yeah, it's pretty close. And you can see how Earth now, so for the next 30 days or so, Earth and Atlas are going to be on the same side of the sun. And data collection is going to be frantic. There's going to be a lot of stuff collected. But, yeah, watch it as it crosses Mars right here. Now, 10 million miles or whatever that is, that's one thing. But with the size of the universe, that's really, really close.
Really, well, just passing through the solar system is really, really close.
What are the odds of that? So that's what the reason why I brought this image up. The universe is ginormous.
Yeah.
And what are they? I mean, it seems oddly specific to do a drive-by through our star system the way that this is going down. That seems intelligent to me.
Well, there's two issues on that. For it to be a natural object going through here kind of speaks to either it being highly improbable or it tells us how much these objects actually are in deep space, which is very useful in itself because at some point, we might want to be building really deep space outposts between star systems, and we not know what the kind of count of such objects were. You can tell that by how often they pass through this area, because the little 3 AU bubble that we all looking at right there, you'll compare that to something like 3 star, light years to a star. You're looking at a quadrillion-fold difference in volumes. But you could have a quadrillion such objects. Space is huge, and there's a lot of stuff in it. For an artificial object, you would never, well, not I should say never, very rarely would you pass from even to the other side of the galaxy between two star systems, actually pass this close to another star just by coincidence, right? It can happen. It may be on a whole galaxy-wide trip once or twice, but of the thousands of stars you passed along the way closely, right, where you're within less than a light year of them, very rarely would you be this close, right? Less than a light day, much less than a light day, light hour. However, an actual spaceship moving this kind of speeds would pass by almost all of them that was on the way because it can use each one of those to pick up a little bit more speed. It's just one of those you can do that trick, right? You need to just have a solo sail you unfold, no fuel, just a solo sail, right? But you're picking up some sunlight, you vaporize your comet material off from whatever icy body you turn into a spaceship. You can pick up speed on each one of those ones where you're going past that star. In which case, yeah, you got a very good reason to go through. The issue then is why not get a little bit closer? And here, they might just not want to lose that much of their actual fuel or propellant or shielding. The closer you get to the sun, the more you're going to evaporate off. And unless you're doing this controlled burn behind you, which it isn't, you're not getting that fuel boost that you'd want to be getting. So if it's this close to the sun, it's, is it passing by as a probe? Is it trying to gain some speed? It doesn't seem like it's trying to gain speed. So that's not the only reason to pass through, but that's normally why you would go through a star system this close. Either you want to drop off some probes of your own, smaller ones, right? And this thing is big enough that you wouldn't really expect it to be a probe in of itself, but to be a big carrier that had, 10 million probes in it based on the size difference there. It could just be dropping a few off as it passes by, in which case there's no reason to get any closer than it does right now. It's chosen to get close enough that it can get solar power for those probes and let them drop off. Getting any closer just melts off a lot of its frosty material. But I could then argue it's still closer than it really needs to be, because it got away with going by almost twice the distance and then lose very little of its fuel or radiation shielding to the sun, evaporating it off. But that's one of those things where it gets iffy. You can make the case that it was getting close enough to drop off probes, and that's it. But that's the only thing I can think of that really makes sense.
How extraordinary is that, though? That is just like, that's the biggest event in human history. Now you're going to be,
right. Common for all we know.
for sure. You're going to be running for governor of Ohio soon, and I'm excited about that. But with me saying something like that, that's pretty cavalier. But he will be governor of Ohio someday. What do you make of the interest of Congress and the Senate and these UFO hearings and the expert witnesses, especially this last hearing that we just had, where we had one active member, right, in the Navy, but four members of the military, one still active duty, to get up and testify about UFOs and UAPs in front of Congress with some pretty amazing stories to tell.
It's a breath of fresh air. Like, when we were growing up, nobody in the sciences or the military wanted to be caught dead saying, I think I saw an alien, because it was like a career ender, right? And it was, I am so glad to see the government. And again, I take this from the extreme skeptic perspective. I don't think these are aliens in all likelihood, but I hated that era where you were automatically considered to be some kind of lunatic because you were looking at this topic. That never made sense scientifically or ethically. And it should always been taken a lot more seriously than it was. I'm glad to see that is, again, that they're starting to do that. And they did that for a little bit in the 50s too, I suppose. But yes, we should treat this stuff seriously and give it serious contemplation. Doesn't necessarily mean it's what's actually occurring, but it shouldn't be something where you got to go, hide that you've ever seen one. If you think you've seen a UFO, you should be able to say, I think I saw that, the same way you report a bear in your backyard, because that's how you should treat any anomaly. A free sense of being able to report it without people pointing a finger at you. Because anomalies are weird and rare. That's why they're anomalies. And if people are afraid to report them when they see them, we never get to actually figure out what they are, whatever they turn out to be. And we had this mindset, and I really am very upset at academia in general about that, of treating any of these things as, nonsense. Well, at the same time, in physics, we were freely talking about alien scenarios in the 70s, 80s all the time, generally on the more skeptical side, but I'd say most physicists are a lot more favorable towards alien life in this galaxy than I am. I tend to assume there's no other intelligences in the galaxy. Most people I know in the sciences think that there is. And yet at the same time, they thought that and were still being so harshly skeptical towards people who thought they might have encountered it. And again, I always go back to that same thing. If there's aliens in this galaxy who can make spaceships practically to contraptory in star systems, I think it'd be absurd to suggest they wouldn't visit. That's why I tend to conclude they don't exist.
You see my Drake equation shirt?
Yeah.
I wore this for you tonight. The Drake equation. See, this is why and I don't want to at all kick a dead horse on this, but the Drake equation, when Frank Drake developed this and wrote it out and did some initial calculations with all of his other buddies, right? Looked at it. The number that they came up with, and you remember, it was 10,000. There's 10,000 planets with advanced alien ET extraterrestrial life on it. That was the first number in the 1960s. Right?
I don't remember the exact calculation, but yeah, they've definitely got a wide range, and it's been at least that high.
But that was back then. So they spit out the original number was 10,000 planets with advanced life on it. So, but that was before they knew. Now, even if you let this equation fly and you don't change it, you just plug in the data, right? Well, now what do we know about the Milky Way? And what we know is there's at least 1 trillion planets.
Yeah, more.
1 trillion. Frank Drake wasn't, when he came up with 10,000 planets, there wasn't 1 trillion plugged into this equation at that time. Or stars, and the way that we have calculated now, and we still don't even know how many stars are in the Milky Way.
I think when I was a kid, they were saying that we guess maybe 1% of stars would have a Earth-like-ish planet, in habitable zone size and all that, and that was already telling us 100 billion, or 10 billion in that case. But it was already a huge number. I don't think it's ever been less than 1 million that they would have calculated by that. But the other thing is we don't have any idea what the other terms are valued at. For all we know, 1 out of 1 billion planets might get lichen on it in the first place, and they all become intelligent. Or almost every planet has lichen and algae on it, but almost never develops a brain. We just don't know. We know how many planets there are these days, and we say it's around 1 trillion. They're probably going to be, if Mars can have had life, then we have to wind that zone further. What about places like Titan, or we have methane-based life, or like Europa? If those places had life, there's nothing stopping you from having life on a planet like Pluto. So or even on comets, there's some interesting energy flux on them. You could have trillions of bodies in this galaxy, maybe even hundreds of trillions, where life could realistically have popped up. And then that question, how do they get a brain?
Right. Well, the asteroid Bennu for me just says, yeah, that is the case. Just from one little scoop of dirt right off of that asteroid had the 20 amino acids that make up DNA or RNA, and the 5 proteins are complex. Oh, yeah. People don't understand how complex proteins are. We can't replicate proteins.
The amino acids are not that hard themselves. It's they're the one that make up the proteins. But yeah, proteins are
complex.
You look at a water molecule, and it's the equivalent of like a little Lego house of water molecule, and you compare that to a protein or DNA. It's like looking at a skyscraper. So it's different.
Yeah, that's right.
On the skyscraper.
And so we find the 5 proteins that make up DNA in one little scoop of, right? That we crash land that in Utah. You remember that? It was great. That was a huge event. But that one random asteroid, random scoop of dirt off that asteroid that we bring back to this planet, and everything that you need to kickstart life was found in that one little scoop.
We've seen evidence of amino acid clouds that would outmass this whole planet floating around quasars and other nebulae. And that is not, that even ignores the possibility that you might have life that just doesn't happen to work off DNA. And maybe it doesn't happen to use amino acids. Maybe it uses any number of other protein options that don't even rely on them. And so we don't know, right? But that's why by default, I tend to assume life is not all that exceptionally rare, but that intelligent life is. The problem, though, is that intelligent life that can build spaceships shouldn't stay rare, because they should build spaceships and go to other places. So you have to start asking, well, either they don't exist, or they have other interesting places they go, or they just don't like to go. And it could be something like, well, the galaxy is a fun place, but once we discovered how to make portals to another universe, we realized that universe was way richer than this one. So why don't I go settle a desert that I had to spend centuries traveling to get to the nearest part of, that I can step through onto a multiverse copy of my planet where humans never developed as otherwise identical. and that just takes one quick walk through the Stargate, as it were. So
yeah, but you wouldn't have Las Vegas. You wouldn't have Las Vegas.
Oh, you could find a version that had Las Vegas that had been depopulated, I suppose, too.
There are that's one thing, and especially with the skeptics that discuss this stuff. Why Earth? I mean, what's so interesting about Earth? You know what? We have looked at and are actively seeking out exoplanets. All right. We haven't found a beautiful blue gem yet, like us. No. This is, as far as planets go that we have discovered, it's pretty kick-ass.
Yeah. We have yet to find, you'll see the new hyped up this or that article about, well, we found this exoplanet that's another Earth-like thing. We have yet to find an exoplanet that is as habitable as Venus or Mars. When they say we found this exoplanet, it's something twice as massive as Earth, or at best, usually bigger. So, but that's the limitation of the telescope. Those things are probably pretty common. It's easier to spot big stuff and hot, bright stuff, which means closer to the sun. We'll find out. We'll get better telescopes, and that is one of those things we just have to keep building more of them, which will get easier as we get a bigger presence in space. But we always have to figure out, and we will get answers to these things too. That is that they use the X-Files example. The truth is out there. It is out there. I'm skeptical about what those answers will be in terms of alien life nearby us, but really patient. We'll get them.
Does it change? How radically does it change if 3i Atlas, for you, how radically does it change if 3i Atlas turns out to be artificial?
Hugely. At that point in time, I get incredibly paranoid about what happens to intelligent life, because is it alive or just artificial? Mm-hmm. If it's alive, I can be a little bit happier, in which case I'm assuming that it's a very slow probe that's going to come by at some point and say, hey, if you feel like building a portal to this other cool universe, come give us a visit. If it's dead, then that means that no one has managed to produce a functioning spaceship in a 13 billion-year-old galaxy that is still alive. There's no random civilization.
It could be AI androids.
Yeah, and it could be. And that's the same kind of question. What are the AI up to? All that's left over is a bunch of stupid AI, and again, not very smart ones on a new civilization. Because you got something like Lieutenant Commander Data out there. He's not going to just sit around for a billion years. He's going to build a civilization or something. If he doesn't want to build more robots, he'll go clone up some humans to make a new civilization from. It says it's not a universe I'd be particularly happy to see. But again, the thing is, if you find out things artificial, there could be so many other reasons to explain it. The problem is that most of the ones that come to my mind do not fill me with cheer. So
if it's not ours, mm-hmm. If it's not us from the future, holy shit. That's right. Yeah.
Well, if it is us from the future, holy shit.
Yeah, right. Let's get to some questions from the audience really quick. This is from David Todd. He says, what is the 6-kilometer long spray forward toward the sun doing? Everybody's asking that same question. What's up with that?
So assuming it is actually going in that direction, it's not an optical illusion, because it could be that too. We do have some that have actually jetted out, some individual comets that have jetted out toward the sun. By default, if you just think of this as for a simple example, if you're following towards the sun and stuff evaporating off your surface, it is going to go that way. That's, if it were artificial, a sign that things trying to slow down relative to the sun, which means trying to kill speed. That's still not the right angle, though, because you're not actually trying to point your flame at the sun to slow down. You want to be pointing it kind of more angled a way to kill your speed. But what would it be doing if it was actually like an artificial beam going towards the sun? Why would you be beaming particles at the sun? I don't know why you would do that. Doesn't mean there isn't a reason. I just can't think of one.
Yeah. Our ability to understand, even for you.
Yeah.
NASA assets planning to study 3i Atlas. Of course, we have Hubble, Webb, TESS, SWIFT, Sphere-X. We know about Perseverance, the Mars Reconnaissance, and Curiosity. But it's also the Europa Clipper that I was talking about earlier, Lucy and Psyche. Those are the two probes that are on route right now to Jupiter and Saturn. Yeah.
I think isn't Psyche on the way to it's an asteroid maybe, but either way, yeah, everything we've got that we can potentially turn toward it, we are going to. or have already, because whether it's artificial or not, it's an amazingly, this is improbable as an event. Or if it turns out, what if this isn't improbable? Because again, we had a Muamura and what was that one, Borisov, much smaller, both of them. But if this actually turns out to be a very normal thing for us, we saw these things crash through the solar system this close all the time. That means there was a lot of
junk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a very positive sign in some ways, but that would be a little bit odds with our current estimates for background material, not for even things that would actually not to cover dark matter as regular matter, but that would still be a lot. And that would
don't get me started on that. Do not get me started. But and also the Parker Solar Probe Punch and the ESA NASA Soho and Juice as well. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I thought Jackson had something too, but I can't remember what it is at the
moment. Okay. Now this has been put forward by Avi Loeb.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy, would you consider this a Black Swan event? That's a tough one. And where are you on this? When Avi wrote, the paper and spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, that we better get ready for this. What do you think of the Black Swan possibility?
So a black swan is by nature something that's really obvious in hindsight, but wasn't in advance. I think what people were aiming for them was what E.M. Banks called an OCP, or out of context problem, and that's bigger, where you're like, hey, what are those strange metal ships pulling up against outside island I've never seen before? I don't know that aliens would necessarily be all that black swine to us right now, because you'd be like a pool of the population, half people believe in aliens. I mean, visiting actively. So
see, that's where you guys, the intelligentsia, you brilliant thinkers, you guys are all going to treat this like a black swan. All of you are going to go, what's going to happen? Why is everybody surprised?
I should say, there are a lot of folks like, I'm with the National Space Society, of course, and I've often a lot of folks come up and say, well, Isaac, I loved your episode on X, but don't you think aliens have visited, or don't you think that X? They all have different views on it, and it matches up pretty well with the rest of humanity on that. I think it's really, will we be shocked by it? Yeah, I think it's if you kind of know what the universe seems to look like, and you're very invested in that model, and then something comes by and says, nope, you're wrong. If that doesn't like mess up your day at least a little bit, then you're much wiser and more mentally agile person than I am. If people land on the front lawn and get out and it's like aliens, it's like, we saw your videos and thought somebody should let you know you're so wrong. I was like, well, I'm having a nervous breakdown. I'd have to go check.
Well, you're a scientist. That's how it plays out.
Yeah, but even if I could recover from that, and I think I could, but it would take a little bit of time.
You got to have thick skin to do what you do, man. You just do. This is a great question here. It's from Jose. If 3I Atlas is not a comet, then could it be a giant meteor or asteroid?
Asteroid,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Before you answer that, I want you to think of this twofold, because you mentioned this earlier. We've all seen the science fiction movies of a battle out in deep space, and and you always wonder, well, what happened to that debris?
Yeah.
Where does it go? What? Well, if that's the case, and I know that it's got to be going on out there somewhere in the universe, or in this galaxy of ours, that eventually we would see some space debris left over from an ancient war. Why would that be a surprise? And again, an asteroid or a meteor too, as well as a possibility. If it's not an active space probe, but it's space debris, which an asteroid is, it's broken off of something.
Yep.
What do you make of that? If it's not it's not a comet. So could it be a meteor or an asteroid?
Yeah. And in the sense of a comet being specifically something that's gone orbiting our sun close enough to get burned up repeatedly, it's not that. It could be an asteroid. It could actually be an asteroid. The issue is that it moves too fast to be anything that was in our system, unless maybe there was a larger planet out there that it just happened to get a really, really close approach to. But basically, it's too fast to be native to this system. But it could be an asteroid from any number of other places. And could it be on a hyperbolic trajectory from one of those? probably not an inner belt object, but there's a lot of stuff that could cause an explosion that fast. You could be anywhere near a nova. You could have been cracked off a planet. I always suggest it be a fragment of something that hit a white dwarf. And that's an option. It will speed up as it approaches us, and any object will, as it gets into a solar system, speed up. So this was not the speed it was moving through interstellar space at. So the sun's, I want to say we added like 30 kilometers per second of speed to the thing, for where it's at, but that's rough. It could be a fragment of a protoplanet that hit something. It could even be a protoplanet leftover shard. But it could just be a mundane asteroid that has drifted through interstellar space for a long time and picked up stuff. I mean, it's cold out there. There's a lot of gas that could have been attracted to it. It has no gravity of its own to speak of, so it wouldn't be much, but it's got a cross-section. We're picking stuff up. A spaceship, like a big old solar sail floating through space, or a hollow ship that basically is very large compared to its mass, could pick up all sorts of ice as well. It's in deep space, in which case it's going to look very much like a frozen ice ball. But the fragments themselves are going to fall into three categories. The ones that weren't moving fast enough to leave a solar system wherever the battle took place at, if you would. The ones that were on the outskirts of solar systems that didn't need much of a pounding at all. And then the ones that were moving so fast that they'd leave the galaxy. So you have some fragments that were moving throughout the galaxy, but never got stuck to each system. I think I actually ran the numbers on this. I want to say it's all Ghost Armada's episode, but it might have been another one. A lot of episodes these days. So,
Yeah.
You're like a deep space fortress. You're going to build something like that in a big ice ball to begin with, and it's at the edge of your solar system. So even one random explosion on it's going to be fast enough to make the thing, stellar at that point.
What if it's an escape pod from the Death Star?
It could be. Well, yeah, a good escape pod. I have a big sail on it, probably too. It's easy to make things seen, and you can push it with a laser beam or something to slow it down. And again, if it's not a comet, it could be an asteroid. Yeah, I guess that probably what it is. More accurate too, because asteroid means star-like. Horrible name for those things. So it might be the first real asteroid we've gotten to see in that context. Something that actually is from the stars, but it's
the velocity.
It probably deserves its own name. Whatever it is, it probably deserves to have its own category.
Jimmy and Isaac, why is nobody asking Space Force what close-up images they're getting of 3I Atlas? I can guarantee you. Now, remember, 3I Atlas, it was discovered from our impact system. That's what Atlas stands for. How crazy is that? So I would assume, remember in the movie Don't Look Up, the Planetary Defense Force, I think that's what it was called. It's a real, it's a real place. That everything must have been activated when this was first detected. Wouldn't Space Force be interested in this object?
Probably. It's hard to say because Space Force is still very new, so I don't know they have a lot of protocols. I actually got to work on one of the think tanks. I was busy helping them war game some ideas together of how they should operate. But brilliant minds, geeks, of course, they're geeks. So they've seen sci-fi too. What's this strange anomaly that's approaching our star system that everyone's looking at right now and doesn't appear to be normal? Should we look at it? Well, of course, the answer is yes. They're going to. I just don't know that Space Force actually has very many deep space, assets right now. I think they're still mostly focused on, setup. To be honest, they're still getting themselves up to snuff, but they're mostly interested in low Earth orbit, medium Earth orbit objects. That's what their focus would be on. So, is somebody looking at it? Oh, I'm sure, but I don't know that it's gotten too deep. But then they could also have some entire team that's busy trying to war game up. What if it's full of alien invaders? But
right. Check this out from Danny. Stargate Universe predicted this. They did. You know what? I'm going to say that. Can I say you know more about science fiction than I do, and I know a lot.
Oh, I love the Stargate franchise.
Stargate Universe was one of the best TV series ever made.
It was very good.
Two seasons, and it ended before the big finale.
I think the problem was that so many sci-fi shows, they need 3 or 4 seasons to really get going. I love Stargate. I love Stargate Atlantis, especially Stargate Atlantis these days. And I loved the universe. I wish that gotten some more seasons. I felt bad that in the franchise, but it was also trying to be a little bit too much like Battlestar Galactica at the time. I think maybe that kind of like it lacked some of the carryover from the Atlantis and SG.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. But what I really enjoyed, the overarching, is that the storyline was they were chasing down the final signal from something.
Yeah.
Right. A message. And they were going to that and then visiting stuff along the way and having and by the way, the ship that they were on had a Mayan pyramid on the back. I thought that
was the franchise always drawn very heavily on a lot of the Egyptian ones too. Right. Beautiful imagery. And again, I'm pretty skeptical about this stuff, but I love me my sci-fi, so it makes good stories. And Stargate is, I wish they'd bring that back, but then maybe not too, because I haven't always been thrilled with the new stuff from Star Wars or Star Trek, and Stargate could get a reboot, and I might decide I don't like it. So,
man, the new Star Trek, which just ended, was so good too as well.
I need to be caught up on it. I think the problem was I haven't watched much of the new stuff yet. So,
Strange New Worlds, yeah, so good. Okay, Jimmy. In trying to obtain astro data, where do you go for info? Where do you go for your info?
For actual raw data on astronomical things, I usually don't, because I tend to get the extractions of people's papers. But if you're looking for a good one, the database that, well, if it's like exoplanet data, you can actually go to the big exoplanet catalog they got online, which I'm afraid I do not know off the top of my head, but you can Google it.
What about ESA?
Asteroid stuff.
What about ESA? They've got a pretty good.
Yeah, they've been asked, but very open with their data. But a lot of times, like for asteroids, there is a growing database. And I know there's one that's actually online where they simply try to keep track of that. They got a lot of amateurs that report stuff in. And I'm trying to remember.
Oh, are you talking about? I have it right here.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'll help you out. You ready?
Yep.
The Minor Planet Center of the International Astronomical Union.
Yeah, that sounds right. So, and again, these things are all called minor planets, and which is a much more accurate term than asteroid too. So, we have a lot of terms in science. Well, it happens in science is you start finding something that's new and weird, and so you have to give it its name, but you don't fully understand it yet. And then it turns out to be horrible. Gas giant is a horrible name for Jupiter and Saturn. They're not gas.
We sure are finding a lot of those, and I always think, man, this seems. Are there just that many more of them? No, there's not. It's just that they're big.
Yeah, we talk about we got like 10,000 exoplanets, what it is these days, and it's a huge number, yes, but almost every single one of those is either A, a huge gas giant bigger than Jupiter, B, something within spin distance of its star, or C, both. And it's mostly both because they're the easiest ones to see, right? It's like going out in the woods with a pair of binoculars, because it's easier to spot a redwood tree than a little dandelion. That doesn't mean there are a lot of dandelions, though.
Well, especially if you're looking at mass causing a wobble, that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Or if you're looking at a transit, and is that transit a year long, or is it transit? We're finding out that
it'll be one of its years anyway. It'll be one of their years. It will transit every one of its years.
Some of these transits are one of our days. Yeah, exactly. And so when you have a gas giant close, it's hot. So we're seeing that, but it's also spinning. Its transit is 10 days or whatever.
Yeah, and outgas usually too at that point.
And you're going to see that dip in light very easily with a gas giant. So I think that they're just easier for us to find.
Oh, yeah.
Having Earth
we assume that you have, if an object that's 1/10 as wide, you expect to see about 10 times more of them based on minor planet data. So this is actually interesting with Atlas is because it's so much bigger and looked a lot bigger too than ones like a Muamura or Borisov. Yep. We would expect it to see a lot more of those smaller ones. Like you should see like 100 of these smaller ones for every one of the Atlas-sized objects. And that's a legitimate anomaly to bring up, except for the problem being that you are, again, way more likely to spot those. So I tend to guess that things like a Muamura or Borisov are ridiculously common, and we just missed most of them. and time will tell on that one. But because we would expect there to be so many more of them. For every asteroid-like series that's 1,000 kilometers across, you have like 1,000,000 1 kilometer across asteroids in the belt.
So Jose just said, are there any pictures or film taken from Mars probes already available? Yes, here's one right here. There you go. That's from the Mars reconnaissance. Yeah, that's pretty incredible when you think about it. And traveling at that
camera on another planet that we can look at a comet through. That's pretty incredible. I mean, it's amazing just seeing how much better our detection ability goes up these days. And you can get all. I don't know that they put up every last image they get in, and there's a lot of.
Of course they don't. Of
course it's just
they
a memory thing.
But, Isaac, put your sensible hat back on.
But there's a bunch that are available one way or another from NASA. If you just go, like, each one of those rovers has its own fan page where they got access to the data.
Right. Would it surprise you if NASA was holding back? That they had something not definitive, but something that throws up question marks.
Not really, because they like to hoard stuff for some time anyway. Just get quarantined so they can actually get papers out on it, right? And there's a timeline of that. Usually, it's coming up because there's a lot of whispers about, hey, we just got this, but obviously they're not really trying to keep that secret. They just want to, quarantine the data so they have the chance to write the paper on it first. But the idea that, like, if they have this information, would they be keeping it secret? It just depends on why. Why? If someone said, you will keep the secret or we're going to blow up all your telescopes so you can't spot us, then they probably would say yes to that. If they said, we'll blow up your planet if you don't, then they probably said yes to that. I don't know what hypothetical aliens would have, or our government would have said in response to them to say, let's keep this secret. I just tend to assume that it would be very non-functional because we are not that good at keeping secrets. At least NASA isn't. Or at least they're very good at keeping secrets from me at that point. So.
Okay. I can't go too deep into what I'm about to say, but you'll understand what I'm about to say and why I can't expand on it. Everybody that I have met in this city of Palmdale whose parents worked at Skunk Works, okay? Which is everybody. That's everybody here works there, right? Or NASA, or Northrop Grumman, or Air Force Plant 42. It's all the same group of buildings, down the street. None of them knew what their parents did. Every single one. I asked them all the same question. Oh, okay. So born and raised here. Yeah. Okay. What'd your dad do? Well, I worked at Skunk Works. Okay. What did he do? Don't know.
I've had people who know me for years who do not know that I do a TV that I do YouTube. But I mean, one thing, if you're in a science or engineering thing, how many people really know what their parents do anyway? That's the accountant. Well, okay, what's that involved?
Okay, I can sort of buy that, but you also have a general interest. If your dad works at
stuff too, so it's
if he's the general sales manager at a car dealership, he's not going to keep that secret.
No.
You're going to know exactly what he's doing or whatever. But I'm just saying, secrets can be kept even from your children.
And especially when, like, in a lot of cases, they don't really want to know what they are too. Like, I don't think they'd be ashamed of their work. There are people who do something.
They're not ashamed. They've signed agreements.
Boring. They have NDAs. It's if you put this out there, we're going to throw you in jail for a very long time.
Right.
And the reality of saying, like, well, what do you do? I'm an aerospace engineer. Okay, I clocked out there. Yeah, I can't tell you what it is because I don't know. It's top secret, and you wouldn't understand it. And to be honest, you wouldn't really care because all I've been doing for the last 10 years is manufacturing a slightly better aerofoil.
Well, may be true, for sure. But there's another component to consider with this. Somebody like me comes along and asks them these questions, right? And you can't have an answer for somebody like me. What if I was adversarial? What if I was, a Russian spy or whatever, and you find out, and you meet somebody at a pizza place at Krispy Kreme donuts, and you just become friends, and you find out, well, that's how you would do it. Oh, your dad did what at Skunk Works, right? Well, no, if your children doesn't have that information, then it can't be shared.
Oh, the same thing we told we were stationed overseas. I was stationed overseas in Germany. It was post-Cold War. There was always that worry that you might have spies asking questions. Say, look out for the kind of questions that say, you got a nice young girl who comes up to you, and she's not gonna be like, what's the entry code to get into the building? It's more like, oh, hey, you're in one of those, what do you call them again, with a bunch of soldiers, a battalion. Oh yeah, I'm in 2-3FA. That's our battalion. Oh yeah, I think I met your commander. Isn't that what's his name? No, it's X. It's very easy to pump people for information if they have it. So the best idea is not to give it to them.
Are you speaking from experience?
I've never been. Well, I've been pumped for information at some point, but no, I intentionally avoided any military service that required me to have top secret clearance or anything like that. I just didn't want to. I used to work with the Air Force when I was a civilian back in college, and I just don't like the extra hoops to have to jump through to be involved in things like that much. And I would say that most of the stuff that is ultra secret anyway is incredibly boring and not really all that interesting anyway. It's gonna be, well, what frequency wavelength is the IR on a stealth bomber when it's at cruising speed? And I say that's not information that you want to have in your head anyway. And that's not all that exciting either. But I think it's keeping information secret of that variety is made easiest by the fact that most folks who are in it would desperately love to talk about their field, but they're always going to be suspicious of why anyone's suddenly interested in who's not one of their peers from their own organization. Like, you're not going to be in a hotel and some girl's going to come and say, oh, wow, I find that so fascinating. Tell me more about, what was it, the infrared wavelength of a stealth bomber with that cruising altitude? Tell me more about that one. Wait a minute. That's suspicious. Hopefully.
Now, what I love talking numbers and odds. This is one of the points that Avi makes, and you made this point earlier. Once we collect data, like this is the third interstellar object believe it or not, that number 3, we can suddenly build numbers off of that. Crazy, just that number 3, right? Yeah. Okay, so what is the frequency of this? How much of you can calculate the number. We have now calculated how many particles there are in the universe, right? I mean, these are things you can calculate. Yeah. You can eventually get to these numbers. But when it comes to something like this, and there's a frequency of something arriving here, what can be pulled out of the fact that this also, it's the third object, but it's on our ecliptic, and its trajectory to the sun and its closeness to it. Now, what kind of numbers how common?
That's a great one though, because one, if I was going to send something in if I was just passing through a star system and I want to gain speed, I have no reason why to come out on the ecliptic. But if I wanted to observe things, that helps. However, it also has to take a bit of a side note. It's within like 5 degrees, the ecliptic, something like that, which is making like a 1 in 20 chance of it being there. It's not too improbable, but we are way more likely to spot it. So for my part, I tend to assume that there's probably 100 of these that have passed by in the last 10 years we haven't even seen. And these are the 3 we lucked out and spotted that got close enough, big enough, and we were looking in the right area. Now, we weren't going to miss Atlas. It's quite bright. But the other ones, we could have missed them easily, especially if they were not on the ecliptic. So you do have a bit of an observer bias there in the sense that we are more likely to see the ones on the ecliptic plane. But it's improbable. Yeah.
Yeah, I had this sighting. Okay, I'm going to go back to this question. I'm going to mark this because I want to ask you this question for a second time. And by the way, thank you for this, Isaac. You're the absolute very best. Now I forgot what I was going to ask. It was so important. Why did it just get past me? Okay, I'm not going to waste time on that. So Isaac said it's not a comet. Then what does he think it is? I know
an interstellar asteroid would be my top guess. but I don't know what it is that we need more. I mean, like it's not a comet because a comet's a specific thing in our.
What do you want it to be?
What would I love for it to be? A derelict alien ship. Awesome. But I mean, again, that would have a lot of potential downsides in terms of it would kind of indicate a very dark galaxy out there for intelligent life. But yeah, of course, an alien ship would be awesome for that. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to turn out to be a random piece of debris from some collision of protoplanet or a dwarf planet in some of the solar system. And maybe in a few centuries we'll be able to run down which one it was.
There was a bunch of comments that came. I don't know where people are getting this data from. And, once you start a rumor, it builds in a dogma and becomes truth. Mm-hmm. But that there were some comments going around that it was hollow. Did you read any of that? And
it sounds
where would you
familiar,
get that kind of where would you get that kind of data from is my point.
The only way you could tell on something like that would be if it was heating up too quickly, I suppose. So let's say the surface was changing temperature. You could tell by the infrared coming off, you could see the surface. And it was changing temperature too quickly for an object of that mass being heated by the sun at that distance. Then you could maybe start saying that it had a hollow core, but not for an object that big, I think, anyway, just because it would be so insulated in terms of thickness. Something like a Mua, you might be able to tell if it was hollow because it would be heating up too quickly as it got close to the sun. But that'd be like the easiest way of telling that. Or if it was spinning, some spin will let you tell if it was, more condensed to the outside than evenly distributed. But that would be a stretch. It's very easy to tell if you got close to it, though. But not from. I don't know how you'd be able to tell from the data we have on that one.
Will it be easy for the world because of science fiction and films and books and comments and everything else, conspiracy theory, everything else that we have developed in the last 50 years about interstellar space and ET and contact? Would the world freak?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or you think so? You think the world would freak out?
I mean, yes, because knowing about the idea and watching, like aliens probably would not be like the green slave girl from Orion we see in Star Trek. It's more likely to be some three-tentacled monster that you would not want to be anywhere in the same room with. They're not going to look like us. They're not going to act like us. They'll have certain overlapping logic, things like that. But they're going to be weird, and they're going to be. Like I said, I can't really see what the scenario would be for intelligent civilizations in this galaxy not expanding if they could. So the answer to that, if they're there, there's going to be an answer. Obviously, it's not by some freak coincidence. That's going to be disturbing. I think that if you actually get to meet aliens, it's going to freak you out. And you can be ready for it. You can see all the sci-fi in the world, but still, it's not going to be like, oh, hey. No, this is normal. This is good. I'd be worried if it didn't freak us out. Although I'll put the caveat on that if I was an alien civilization trying to reach out to us, I'd have done my homework in advance. And if I'm not rampantly hostile or cruel, I am going to try to pre-sort things to not shock them too much. So, like, if you got agents on the ground, you start to say, well, we look like the Vulcans. Well, let's put them into sci-fi so they're familiar. But I don't know. That would be like, I would try if I was encountering another alien race to pre-sort things so that they would not be too horrifyingly shocked when we actually said hello. Right. But then I tend to feel like the best, most ethical way of dealing with that too is just come in and say hello, because spying on civilizations for multiple decades, especially when you're actually there in person, that's going to start raising some serious trust issues going forward in the future. And I don't know that.
And here's what's interesting about that. I tend to agree, but here's what's interesting. Your work in this field about expanding thought and possibilities of every angle that you can think of, right? You have covered every possibility which, by the way, is endless, and it breaks off into fragments. You can do what you are doing. Right. You are never.
I really thought I was only going to do like 2 or 3 of them the entire time, and I always keep finding other things to discuss on it. And people keep watching.
Each one another 100 questions. Like that. Look, you did the Fermi paradox, and you ended up doing like 150 episodes on that, right?
Yeah, there's got to be at least 50 or 60 core Fermi paradox. Yeah, but
yeah. It's insane. And so, but here's what's crazy about that. You have built a huge audience, you know, and a great fan base. Nobody is freaked out. You have presented some pretty far out possibilities with this. Yeah. Nobody's freaked out. Nobody's jumped off bridges. People appreciate, but people appreciate and are interested in this subject, Isaac. It's a really big deal.
And I do try to present in a way like we used to have a series I call the Existential Crisis series. I stopped doing episodes that specifically because I like to try to give people a slightly nicer off ramp on an episode. Same material, but a little bit less of a, oh no, this is terrifying. And because
I stopped, I had to back off on that. I did.
But it does come to, are people freaked out about it? No, I don't think so. And I think we'll be less freaked out and more able to handle it. But we're still going to be shocked. You think about it in advance, you do your homework as best you can. You're still going to, someone's going to be like, nope, this was just not on our radar. It's like when we went out to the moon. Nobody even thought about the idea there might be super sharp dust on it. That's one of the hugest factors for not going back there. We don't have machinery that's really well tested to survive that right now. So you're a little hesitant to go back up there. We made it back all 6 times, but that was unexpected, right? Every time we, do these explorations, we find something that we just didn't expect. And it's not always all that big of a deep of a thing. It's like, oh, that was really obvious in hindsight. Black swan, right? A lot of science is that, but it's just, when I say reality is so much stranger than fiction, there are so many things where I would never have believed it if it wasn't already like peer reviewed. Because that's not how that would work. And so I assume there's a lot of stuff out there that I just take for granted right now is true. That's going to turn out to be completely wrong.
Oh yeah. That's called the entire world of physics.
Yeah.
He laughs because he knows I'm speaking the truth. What would happen, Isaac? What would happen if an object that size were to crash into the sun at 250,000 miles per hour?
Oh, let's see. Well, what I say earlier was probably like 20 gigatons. And so it had like 10 to 30 joules of energy in it, something along those lines, plus or minus a order of magnitude there. Crashing into the sun.
Would it be just a blip?
Yeah. It happens, right? Things that big. I don't know if we've done doing observations, but what was that one that ran to Jupiter years back?
But they had like 8. You remember that?
Yeah. It happens to the sun too. Now, in the sun's case, things tend to break up and fragment and boil off before they'd actually hit. But at the same time,
I saw an asteroid or meteor, whatever, hit the moon a couple of weeks ago, and I watched the film of that. That was pretty. That was pretty cool.
When you look at the size of the asteroid, that crater on the south, Atkin crater on the South Pole, that thing is huge, and we've probably been hit by things because of that too. But we don't have the record of that the way the moon does. The moon looks like a very beat up boxer's face, and it shows its history, and it's an abusive history. The sun has been hit by far more objects like that, and it's probably been hit by dwarf planets.
Right. So would the sun just swallow it up?
Slowly, and people might think for something that big. Now, in the 20 kilometer range, I think is the maximum size they're putting on Atlas, and it's probably smaller than that. It's going to swallow it up pretty easily because it will fragment, absorb, and you might get a bit of a spit up flare or something like that, but probably not. The sun is really thin up there. It's like thinner than thin air on that photosphere that we look at. Red giants, you could actually have planets existing inside them for protracted periods of time just because they are hot, but they are so thin. It's like an oven. It would take a long time to boil them off. You could actually slow a spaceship down by going through a red giant just to slow down that way. And it wouldn't burn you out. But if it were like a larger, like a Vesta, a metallic asteroid, that would be much worse. But I still don't think it would probably cause any damage to us. The kinetic energy involved would be less than the sun spits out in an hour and probably divided over multiple days. So would it be noticeable? Yes, but That's the sad thing. We don't have a lot of data on things hitting the sun.
No, we
nice to have a
don't.
reflection on that.
You never know about things, but could it pierce through when you understand the way the sun operates? And most people don't. They just take it for granted on what it is. But what's going on right now with its hydrogen core and its helium shell and how that works, and it's weird. It is entropy isn't playing out there. It'll play out in 5 billion years, but right now it's pretty damn stable, right? You know what I mean?
It produces energy and it excretes at the same rate, and it does that by expanding, and it's thin. It's
thin. So, so if something went into it, is it possible to have an exit door for a large coronal mass ejection or something else to exit? Like poking a hole in a balloon.
You could pass through the sun. Yeah, I mean, at least the outer bits would try to go through the core. But and again, if it's a dense enough, fast enough object, it might be able to get through reasonably intact, especially through the thinner parts than the top. I don't think you'd be very likely to see anything that was on a sunward trajectory actually get out of it, though, that was natural. And the reason why is one of the things about comets I said that they differ is they get baked over and over again, in and out, right? They lose material. They also are all temporary. No comet is a permanent body. They are long-lasting on a human timeline, but every time they pass by the sun, they not only get perturbed a little bit by the gravity of the sun, the other planets they pass by, which are all in different places each time it comes through, they're also getting matter burned off them like a rocket flame, and that adjusts its trajectory. So it's every time it has a different trajectory coming through, so they're never on a stable orbit. And eventually they burn out. They probably run into the sun occasionally. And the closer they get to the sun, the more they're going to be perturbed. So they don't really last forever. Nothing does, of course. But I'd be really curious if we get better data to be able to actually see how would most of these bodies work, because most of them probably start off as some interstellar deeper object, not the Jupiter belt ones, of course, that just gets perturbed by something else passing through, maybe like Atlas, and they just end up. We had, Schultz's star that maybe passed within as little as a tenth of a light year of us, some tens of thousands of years ago, not that long, and we probably had ones closer. You're going to get comets from events like that. That's really cool, but it is sad. I was just thinking we really don't have much data on things hitting the sun, at least not that I'm familiar with. That would be curious to get more data on.
Isaac, thank you so much for this very important show. I think this is, we've reached this point, this crossroads where we are able to have these conversations about things like interstellar objects and what they mean to us and humanity. And it's a really big deal. And we will see how this plays out. But just thank you so much. I do want to remind you. I just put up, or we just put up in the chat, your channel, of course, Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur. When I first reached out to you and you had like 10,000 subscribers. Remember that? Remember those? You remember those?
Now you're a long time ago, yeah.
Now you're approaching 1 million and you've got all of this stuff that's up there. And but we've been friends for a very, very long time, and I'm very proud of your success, and just thank you for everything that you do. It's just, you have an amazing body of work that's up, and everybody do go check out Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur. It's one of the coolest rabbit holes that you can go down, and just spend your time there and jump into his head, because it's an amazing journey. And thank you for that, Isaac, and keep doing what you're doing. We will, we're going to do a show here again with Isaac, not only as this starts to play out with 3i Atlas, but Isaac and I have got a lot of catching up to do and lots of things to talk about. So we're going to get that going very soon in the next couple of weeks. And there you go. Isaac, thank you so much. How often do you still do, what, once a week?
I should do more like 2 a week of late, but once a week, always on Thursday mornings, and then extra episodes as time permits. So we got one tomorrow on the Fermi Paradox, it turns out.
Yeah, we haven't done one of those shows in a while too. Yeah. See, that's it. That's why I love you, man. Isaac, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. And we'll see you back here in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much, man. Isaac Arthur, everybody. Again, Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur on YouTube. Seriously, the reason why the internet is here is his YouTube channel. Go and check it out. We've got the links up and in the description below, and of course over on our website. Thank you so much, Isaac. You guys behave and be well. Tomorrow night is our annual Halloween show with the one and only Jim Harold. We've been doing this for many years. Tomorrow night, the great Jim Harold joins Fade to Black. So until tomorrow night, happy Halloween. Happy 3-Eye Atlas. Dodgers lost tonight, by the way. They're behind 3-2. I'll see everybody tomorrow night. But for now, all I've got is Go Beckley Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go Beckley Tappy.